Hello and welcome to my action research. I'm presenting distractions in an online environment. Um, so for this action research, I worked with a group of about 10 online learner middle school students. Um, and the problem is that online environments are not inherently controlled. Students are not watched over always and guided by a person of by a either by a teacher or by someone else. So a lot of times distractions can be more of a problem that they would be in a real life environment such as a classroom. Students are not always supervised in these environments, and distractions are a lot more likely. So the purpose of my action research was, what impact will distractions such as sound have during assessments? The study aimed to help clarify the ideal learning environment for online learners, and as more and more online learners are taking classes online, this question will become more and more important. Um, so for the literature review and rationale, so the question has never been directly dealt with. Online environments are relatively new, so there's not that much detail and information regarding online environment and specifically distractions that can be found in this type of environment. There are two prevalent studies though. Online learners in a graduate program were asked about multitasking distractions, which is also can occur for middle school students as well, as I found out in my research, and study content analysis of whole class online discussion versus smaller class discussion. This one dealt more with distractions and off-topic discussion. So for the first literature, from the first piece of literature, the findings suggest that most students in the study were able to use technology to meet their own learning needs, but that these needs vary from learner to learner. Um, Basically, different learners got more and less out of the online environment. Distractions were more prevalent in some online environment and in some students than others. And that's kind of what the research study, the action research, this first action research presented. It wasn't very definite on its conclusion or any kind of suggestions. And then in the second action research, a significant portion of the postings within the whole class discussion forum became what the research labeled as distracted or off topic. Distractions were very prevalent in the online environment in their study, and as in so far in my internship in this online classroom, I have found a lot of the same kind of results, a lot of distractions happening from students interacting with one another. So for this methodology, I took a small group of middle school online learners from my internship class, and I handed out three studies over 3 weeks. The first study was a qualitative one that asked for online learning preferences and habits, basically what kind of environment they worked in, what they typically what their multitasking habits were, how noisy they would describe their environment to be, and other facts that of relevance. The second survey was just a mini quiz that I handed out. I asked the students to take it in a what they considered a quiet environment, and just I tallied up the results and said and found out the average grade. And then the third survey was very similar to the second survey. It was also a mini quiz with a short reading segment that students were required to take. And the difference in this one was that I linked to a video that they played the video, and the video was not more of a picture but more of a sound, and it replicated a noisy environment. It was just a noisy environment looped over and over again, which students were required to then read and then answer some questions while this noise was occurring. So, and here's a couple questions from the survey. How many hours a day do you spend on homework? Where do you typically complete your homework? Do you typically multitask, listen to music, and how you would describe your environment? Here's some of the questions from, here's the second survey. It was a survey about Halloween and what the origins of Halloween are. and they were asked to just answer a series of true and false questions. And the third survey is very similar to the second one, except this one is about animals and hibernation. And again, they were asked five true and false questions regarding animal hibernation, and um, just based on the text, all the answers were quite straightforward. They were I didn't try I tried not to make any trick questions or anything. Just everything found within the text. Because we're not testing here. This wasn't for a grade or anything. This was just to find out what kind of impact a noisy environment would have. So this third survey, you can't see it in this picture, but right above this picture, I linked to a video that they played while taking the survey. Okay, so the results were, for the first survey, what I found out is that 80% of the students spend more than 5 hours a day, um, not on homework, but on the internet, on their computer. 60% of these, 60% of the students spend 1 or 2 hours a day on homework, and then 30% spend 5 or 6. So typically, it averages at around 3 hours a day spent on homework, which is quite sizable. 70% sometimes describe themselves as sometimes multitasking. From there, the other 30% describe themselves as multitasking a bit more. 60% do not listen to music when working on homework, and 40% do. 50% describe their schoolwork environment as very noisy, so they typically work in noisy environments to begin with. So let's see what effect this had. Well, on average, the second survey was the average grade on the second survey was 64%, which is not a passing grade. And then on the third survey was 55%. So on the first survey, where they were asked to not listen to music, to have a quiet environment, they scored 9% higher than on average than on the third survey, which they were on a noisy environment. So although the difference is noticeable, it's not a drastic drop between the distraction survey and the quiet survey. So I'm going to go over here to reflection and future changes. So although the intervention was somewhat effective, obviously a larger sample size is necessary. 10 students is definitely not definite in any way. I would really like to do this with a whole class and over a series of different environments. Basically, different students' perception of what quiet is different. So I would really like to be able in the future to control that, and control the noise and make sure that all the technology is working better. They could have very well not used the video properly. Um, and lastly, normalizing the two surveys would be necessary for future changes. Although I tried my best to make both surveys of equal skill and difficulty, there's no way to definitely judge that and make sure that they're equivalent. One survey might be more difficult for some students or for other students, depending on the wording and other factors. Um, and then the reflection overall, it was a successful thesis. I found out that the noisy environment has a definite and noticeable effect, although, you know, it's a little difficult to judge on such a small scale. Um, but so this brings a relevance and awareness to the developing problem as more and more students are working in online environments. We need to ask ourselves what the best place that they should be working at should be. They should, where should they be working? Should they be supervised at all times? What kind of noise is right, or if any noise is right, what kind of distractions? Should they be allowed to multitask while working on homework? Um, so these questions need to be more prevalent as we move to an increasingly digital online classroom. Um, I recommend us to I recommend to do another study in a more official environment with more control, and this could help shape the future of online workplace. As more students become more online savvy, we need to make sure that there's more control in their work environment. They need to be able to perform as effectively and efficiently as they possibly can. Right. So overall, the conclusion is distractions in an online environment can be quite detrimental to student performance. I'm sure that's not a huge controversial statement, but it was nice to go ahead and test it and see what the differences are, and they are quite sizable. 10% is the difference, is almost the difference in a, well, it is a difference in a grade level. So when students would be scoring A, they might be scoring a B instead. So we need to think about that as we move forward towards the future. Thank you for listening.